Welcome back to the Asking for Knowledge podcast. Hope you liked that little intro there. I am learning all of the nuts and bolts of this soundboard. Hit the button, it played the sound, thought it was cool. Figured we'd kick it off with that. Maybe someday we'll have a cool jingle. Maybe someday we'll have edited video of these podcasts. But for now, as discussed previously, we're going with the most practical, most efficient manner for transmission. Hit record, upload for consumption. So, as a reminder, we don't do edits. We don't offer video yet. The first couple episodes, you may be able to scratch out a video or two on YouTube, but it was taking too long to edit and manage, and so we are not going to do that at this point in time. We're just here to disseminate information and get the conversation going and ask the questions. The topic for today, where to start in building resilience in young athletes. I think I've got us at a great place to start. We'll find out. This is going to be a quick episode. So this version, Asking Out Loud, one of three versions we do on this podcast. Asking Out Loud is typically going to be me, maybe potentially joined by others at some point, but for the moment, just me ranting and raving and having a discussion about things that I've either experienced or learned or things that are going on out there in the youth baseball world and bringing it to the forefront, bringing it out in the open, hopefully getting folks talking about it. At the end of the day, we want to get to first principles on everything youth baseball to determine if this current system is serving our kiddos, and if so, how, and if not, how, and what can we do to make changes where necessary. Second show option, quickly asking the experts. We're going to bring in folks from all around the youth baseball world and let them share their ideas. We're going to prompt them with questions. We'll ask them some hard questions, but hopefully will help us get to the bottom of what's going on in so many different ways. Player development, tournament, scheduling, games, nutrition, health, mental health, all kinds of things. And then lastly, asking your parents. So this is where our parents, either via their responses on surveys, which we will present, or the parents themselves, maybe that have been through the recruiting process, maybe that have some nightmare scenarios to share. Would love to talk to parents whose kids kind of flamed out. Maybe they were really talented, did well, but flamed out and decided they didn't want to play anymore. Digging through there, looking at all the angles. If you're not familiar with Asking for Knowledge, we are an organization that is dedicated to helping young players master the mentality, mechanics, and joy of baseball, strong minds, strong bodies, and strong spirits, maybe? Anyway, that's a new one. We're going off the fly here. But having fun doing it. It's a beautiful game. We see the game as such, but there is a lot of stuff happening. And we try our best here not to speak judgmentally. We want to be open-minded. We want to be curious. We want to search for truth and find what the reality is. And so that's why I say stuff, because it might be the best we can do. But we're going to go on a journey to find out. So what are some ideas on how we can build resilience in these young players? This is going to be a short episode today, but think of this, and this is not new from me. These are kind of a synthesis of ideas that I've taken from other people of all various types. So you may, depending on what world you're living in, you may either via a podcast or a book come across these same things. So I just want to be clear. These are not my original ideas, but they all have also been synthesized in a way that to give a credit to the original person would be incredibly hard, because it's kind of all run together for me at this point. But it's the idea of if we were going to build the strongest humans, not just in physical strength, in mental strength, in intelligence, in competence, in self-control, if we were going to build that human, what would that look like to do that? And the reality is it would not be represented by an easy life. It would not be represented by instant gratification or no challenges, or just an easy, smooth pathway. Reason being, we just learn very little when things are easy and smooth. It makes me think of the old maximum. It's like you don't pray for patience. Everybody jokes about that, but it's really true, right? The implication here is that you don't get patience unless you go through situations where you're forced to wait. Want to develop a skill? Fight the battles that help you develop that skill. When we think about every other major virtue, they kind of all follow a similar path. So along with patience, we think about things like integrity. We think about things like humility, diligence, courage, resilience, gratitude, respect. And each one of these are developed through a process, and a process that unfortunately for us humans can be very painful to experience, but it produces these things in us. It's hard to develop courage if you don't need courage to accomplish something. It's painful to feel the effects of living without integrity, the times when you didn't tell the whole truth. Unfortunately, I've done that. But those times where you feel that pain on the way to developing the thing, and it helps you understand and appreciate how important that virtue is in your life because you didn't have it for a period of time. So again, back to the topic, at least as it pertains to resilience, we don't develop resilience by getting everything right the first time and never experiencing a setback. So if we polled parents on this, and I imagine at some point we will, I hope that we will, but I would bet to a person they would all say they want their children to embody these virtues, some of the virtues that I've just mentioned along with others. Time will tell when we conduct that survey if we're off or not, but I would bet that a huge percentage would say that they want their kids to embody those virtues. But and this is a big but. It's not a pun. We don't give our kids chances to experience the pain most of the time. So just sit with that one for a second. We want these virtues in our kids, but we don't give them opportunities necessarily to learn those virtues. We want to swoop in and make it right. We want to swoop in and have the hard conversations that they need to have with a friend. We want to do it for them. We want to make sure their feelings aren't hurt. We want to protect them. We don't want them to go through those painful experiences. I've got 3. I don't want mine to go through that same thing either. But they will at some point in their life. And so the sooner we can begin to help them put things in a proper frame, I think the better they'll be long term. So, resilience. How do we build it in young athletes? Today we're going to talk, again, quickly. This is going to be a quick one. We're going to talk about excuses. And I say let the games begin because I've got what I feel like has the potential to be a hot take on this. I don't know. It may not be. I may get a bunch of head nods and claps and people saying, yeah, you're exactly right. This is the way to go. Unfortunately, I think this is another one of those with excuses that a lot of people would agree on the surface until something happens. And then that's when it kicks in, right? So my personal take on this is I do my absolute best for myself and for my children to never, ever, ever, ever use an excuse. I'm not saying you should adopt it, but I'm going to describe why I think it's important. And I'll give a couple of baseball related stories as it relates to this. So my sophomore year, I'm scuffling with the bat. For whatever reason, I get a feel for a couple games, hit a couple homers, have a couple good games. And if you didn't listen to episode 2, I was a sophomore at this time, so young guy on the varsity team. Hit a couple homers, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. Was in the cage on a Saturday. A coach walked through, and he's watching me swing, and he says, I just hit one of the two the night before, and he says, "Yeah, look at Mabe. He's got that uppercut swing. Hits a couple homers, and he's got an uppercut swing." Now, I have always and continue to be very coachable and have put a lot of pride in that, to being teachable, coachable, will listen and try to understand. And so when I heard that, the way that I interpreted it was, oh no, like I have gone down a path I don't need to go down. And I wasn't smart enough at the time to really think through the results and the outcomes that were happening, right? I was starting to have success with the bat. I was hitting the ball a long ways, or at least did for a couple times. And so I wasn't smart enough to say, wait a second, like you need to think through this before you start changing things. But I pretty much immediately went back to the kind of the A to C swing that we were all taught, hitting down on the ball, hitting line drives and ground balls, fly balls or outs. That was the mentality back in the day, and it still is to some extent. There are ridiculous battles ongoing. Get on Twitter and just bring your popcorn. It's quite the excitement, but I digress. I changed it, and I only ended up hitting maybe 4 more homers in all the games that I played after that, which were, it was a bunch. So four for as many games as I played might as well be 0. It was not many. And so, it would be very easy for me to sit here as a 41-year-old and say, yeah, the reason I didn't make it was because of that comment. I was on track to be somebody. Probably not. But anyway, let's talk about another story, another baseball story. So I was very fortunate that my dad really believed in giving me every opportunity to be successful. And so he had arranged, under multiple circumstances for me to work with some different folks. And just to give you an idea of the pedigree of these folks, one is a current major league manager. The other was a Division I coach at the time and was as a hitting coach for a pro organization or hitting instructor or director of hitting or something like that as recent as 2018. And then a third, yet still, was another D1 coach. And I spent a lot of time, relatively speaking, with these guys, working on my swing, giving feedback, all that kind of stuff. And really, I didn't learn anything that got me over the hump. So it would be easy for me to say, they didn't know what they're talking about. They didn't help me at all. And we'll talk in future episodes about some of the things that they did and didn't talk about with me that I guess looking back on it now, we didn't have technology back then. We didn't have, I remember one of the 3, we did a little bit of video work, but it was like, it was just ridiculous compared to what's available today via cell phones and apps and sensors and all the things that are out there. But, I didn't have the ability at the time to really diagnose what was going on, and they did their absolute best. But the whole point of this is, I worked with the guys that are at the highest level and still didn't get there. But what's easier to say? They didn't know what they were talking about. They couldn't help me. The coach ruined me, when he walked through and made that comment. No. Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, it is easier to say that. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't serve me. It didn't serve me. It never will serve me. But oftentimes we do this in making excuses to explain a story, to give a justification as to why or when or how or whatever, and let ourselves off the hook. It's kind of that pressure relief valve, if you will. Preserve some level of something with the folks that we're talking to. So let me tell you real quick, because there is a lot of gray area on excuses, but let me just share with you real quick the way that I think is the easiest way to think about it. I think the easiest way to look at this is to, when something happens, you begin to search for reasons that the reasons why it happened. The reasons why, something didn't happen, if it's the opposite side of that. Look at the scenario and determine your role in it. And I've talked before about the Talata framework. This is the O. So we tried something, now we observe. We ask ourselves the question, what happened? What was my role in it? How was I involved? What were my behaviors? What were the things that I can control? And that starts the process of learning and growing and adjusting. So real life example, and this happened in our last tournament, in the last game. Batter was in there, kid throws a pitch, ump calls it a ball. There was 2 strikes at the time. Next pitch, ball 3, 4, 5 inches higher out of the strike zone. The umpire rings him up. Most of us in that scenario, as far as we get with that, is that stupid umpire. Can't believe he called that. He just, a pitch before, he called it a ball. This one was even worse. He called it a strike. These umpires are terrible. Can't we get better guys? Umpires, umpires, umpires. I'm saying, who gives a hoot about the umpires? Why should we care about the umpire? Until we go to an electronic strike zone at all levels, umpires will continue to be a pain in our butts. That is real life. Now, let's flip that. Okay, let's play that out. Kid comes back to the dugout. You say, you've already kind of yelled at the umpire as he's walking off the field. The kid comes back to the dugout. You walk over there and you're like, oh, it's terrible. I can't believe it. And you're jumping in. Now he's talking to the rest of his teammates. Did you see that? I can't believe that. It was so bad. Did you see that? Now all of a sudden, the next guy steps in the box. And there's potential for the exact same thing to happen. So by putting the focus on the umpire, now I've not given my team an opportunity to be successful. I'm not giving this kid a chance to be successful and consider what other factors were in play here. I've not given myself an opportunity for growth. I've plugged in the excuse. It's the umpire's fault. End of story. Nothing could be done, and move on. And while the reality of the strikeout is true, right? I've not seen one come back and say, you know what, you were right. That ball was high, and I did call the other one. So don't worry about it. Come on back, and we'll make it right. No, it doesn't happen, and it's never going to happen. Well, I don't want to say never. There's been some things with appeals. But anyway, here's the point. If we use the process of observing, we ask what happened, and then we begin to think about what the child's role was in the situation, what our role was in the situation. Had the ump been calling that pitch? Had he been inconsistent the whole game? Was this brand new? Was this something out of nowhere? Did it happen to other hitters? Were there pitches and other at-bats that were up and in that he called strikes? Maybe it's the way the umpire's seeing the ball. Maybe it's the batter being too close to the plate. There are so many things that can be considered in these scenarios. But if we stop at the excuse, and this is one just small example, but this happens over and over and over again. If we use the excuse, it's somebody else's fault, we feel good for a little bit, and maybe we feel good as long as that story stays alive, but we don't learn from it. So the point being, if we can teach our kids a pattern of learning from these situations that most other kids, parents, coaches get frustrated by. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking serious competitive advantage, right? If I've got a team full of kids that just expects the world and the umpires and everything around them to be unfair, unjust, unbalanced, the sooner they learn to expect that and figure out their role in it and how they can maximize their opportunity given what is already there, now we've got something we can cook with. Let's project into the future. What happens when the umpire is replaced by another authority figure of some type? Maybe it's a boss or a manager, just somebody. Maybe it's a government entity. I don't know. We can get crazy with this, but now all of a sudden that kid knows they've been influenced over this period of time to say the umpires don't matter. The umpires are irrelevant. What is my role in this process? How can I push through? How can I develop courage? It's certainly not by placing all the blame, even when it is their fault. Right? What can I do? What happened? What are my options? What led up to it? What was my involvement? And how can I change things going forward so that I get a different outcome the next time, a better outcome, one that suits me better? Now, this does not mean that we do not confront things when they are wrong. So I'm going to throw that one caveat in there, which I don't know, typically excuses and confrontation, excuses you're trying to get off the hook, the confrontation piece of it typically is probably a different part of the scenario. But anyway, I just want to be crystal clear, especially in terms of future when we're talking other authority figures and different things. Like if something's wrong, we got to call it out and we got to teach our kids to do the same. Using it as an excuse that's why I struck out, or that's why I lost the ball game, or that's why this or that or the other, that doesn't serve us. Calling out the misbehavior, so to speak, of what happened is a different thing altogether. So, to quickly recap, and of course we went longer than I anticipated, I get excited. And I hope you have been excited listening, and whether you have been angry and emotional at some of the things that I've said, or you say, hey, agree with everything you said, hope you're entertained either way. So to quickly recap, 0 excuses, ever. Not putting the blame at somebody else's feet. Taking the opportunity to act like a third-party observer, to try to maintain neutrality and look at a situation and say, what happened? So asking what happened, and then learning and adjusting accordingly. So when we talk about building resilience in athletes, I think this is step 1. If we just kick the leg of the stool out from under excuses, where we never use them, we've got a foundation that we can build off of for growth. Because as long as there's an excuse there, I've got a justified reason to not improve. It's somebody else's fault, plain and simple, right? But when I get rid of the excuse, now I'm left with me. Now I'm left with my actions. Now I'm left with my reactions. Now I'm left with my preparation. What can I do? What did I do? What should I do? So as with most everything in this podcast, this is going to be a topic we are going to go deep down the rabbit trail with. I've got a couple books I'm really excited to share with you. I'll go ahead and give you the titles. One is Mindset by Carol Dweck. One is Grit by Angela Duckworth. And then we've got a slew more that we'll probably do whole episodes or multi-part episodes on, because the lessons are so fantastic in terms of what they have learned through their research and what helps kids develop and grow and what allows them or how should I say, best projects for them to be, I don't want to say it that way. I don't want to say successful. Best projects that they have strong frameworks to live by. I don't know. I don't really like that explanation, but that's the best I got. We're going to wrap it up for now. If you're enjoying the show, if you want to talk about some of the topics that are covered, consider following us. We're on all your major platforms. You can go out there asking for knowledge, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Go out there, interact with our platforms, ask the questions, make the comments, share it, agree, disagree. We want to open dialogue, keep it above board. Personal attacks are not acceptable. That is usually what we revert to when we don't have a good argument. So stay away from those. But interact. Let's talk about things. Follow or subscribe. Participate in our surveys. So at times we will have surveys posted on social media. We'll have surveys that we send out via email and we'll have them available on our website. But we're trying to get as much information and feedback as we can as it relates to youth baseball. We want to know what you're thinking out there, and we want your feedback. Wrapping up. Until next time, keep asking for knowledge.